Słuchasz podcastu Angielski z Konradem. Nowe odcinki każdego tygodnia. Jeśli chcesz popracować nad płynnością, nabrać odwagi do konwersacji, skorygować często popełniane błędy bądź poznać skuteczne metody nauki, ta audycja jest dla Ciebie. Remember, you're not at school, so chill out, kick back and enjoy yourself. Let's begin. Witaj w kolejnym odcinku. Zanim zaczniemy, pozwól, że pokrótce przypomnę, jak możesz wykorzystać mój podcast. Jeżeli czujesz się pewnie ze swoim angielskim, wystarczy, że przesłuchasz audycji. Dla tych z Was, którzy potrzebują odrobiny pomocy, pamiętajcie o notatkach do odcinka. Zatrzymuj podcast, przejrzyj notatki, w razie potrzeby powtórz nagranie. Zapisz się do newslettera za pośrednictwem strony angielskiskonradem.pl, by otrzymać natychmiastowy dostęp do notatek z tego i wszystkich poprzednich odcinków. Dostaniesz również powiadomienia o nowych odcinkach. Jeżeli masz pytania, uwagi bądź sugestie, skontaktuj się ze mną za pośrednictwem adresu angielskiskonradem@gmail.com bądź za pośrednictwem fanpage'a Angielski z Konradem na Facebooku. Switching to English.
Ho, ho, ho! Season's greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Conrad. I hope you will love the show today. Let's begin with some vocabulary. Wreath. Wreath. Wieniec, girlanda. Bauble. Bauble. Bombka. Mistletoe. Mistletoe. Jemioła. Midnight Mass. Midnight Mass. Pasterka. When it comes to books and films, I'm a strong, tough man. I don't get emotional easily. The most touching moments in cinematic history didn't touch me at all. All was well until a certain advertisement, of all things, caught me by surprise. The link to the advertisement in question is in your notes. For now, let me tell you a short story about it. The story begins on an autumn afternoon. It's raining cats and dogs outside. An old man is looking through a window. Then he turns around, pets his dog, and takes a seat in front of a laptop. Riveting so far, isn't it? Excitement cannot be contained. Don't worry, it gets good. You're in for a roller coaster of emotions. The old man orders something via Allegro. The delivery man arrives the next day with a parcel for our hero. He gets back home and opens his parcel. It's worth mentioning that so far he hasn't said a single word. That's some clever writing. I'll explain in a minute why. He takes a book out of the box and reads the title of the book out loud. English for Beginners. The old man makes himself a nice cup of tea, takes a seat at his desk again, and starts practicing the verb to be. I am, you are, he, she, it is. It's a good starting point for an adult learner. Be, along with have and do, are what I call cardinal verbs. You can find those in every language you can imagine. These are super important to master. You use them not only for the main verbs, but also as operators. These are verbs essential to making sentences in other aspects, whether an action is repeated, one time only, or continuous. But that's enough of that pesky grammar. So, be, have, and do. You need to know these verbs well, but I would question the old man's methods of learning. You can learn grammar by consuming media. reading in English, watching films in English, for example. You can learn cardinal verbs by reading some sentences first, then trying to come up with your own examples. You don't need to know the theory, you don't need to study grammar. Instead of chanting the same old mantra, I am, you are, and so on, use it in a sentence. Even something simple like, I am Piotr, he is old, you are a dog. Okay, back to the video. Robert, that's the old man's name, as we will soon learn, begins to stick post-it notes to various things around the house. This is a good exercise to learn some basic vocabulary, even if it is a bit messy. A note may come loose, for example. If you want to try it yourself, go even further. After a few days, take all the post-it notes down, shuffle them, and try to label the items with them again. This time, try to do it without consulting your workbook. Be careful about it, though. If you're learning by yourself, there's naturally nobody there to correct your mistakes. If you aren't mindful enough, you may end up memorizing an incorrect term for a particular object. That's a mistake Robert makes. He calls a knife a fork. Later we can see that he labeled his computer mouse as a cat. To Robert's credit, he corrects his mistakes. It isn't easy to find mistakes when learning by yourself. It's not impossible, but it's a lot more difficult than learning with a teacher. After labeling the entire house, his dog included, he practices speaking a bit. He does it in front of the mirror. Again, points for Robert. Such an exercise improves your confidence and helps you get used to your English voice, because you do sound different when speaking a different language. Nevertheless, he seems very excited to be learning English. A positive attitude goes a long way when learning anything, really. Robert never parts with his headphones. He listens to recordings when he's at his desk. He listens to recordings on the bus. If he could, he would listen to recordings in his bathtub. Instead, he points at different things in the bathroom while having a bath and names them out loud. In English, of course. Robert also watches some action films in English. Some person threatens to kill the other using very colourful language. Later, while having another bath, he threatens to kill an innocent rubber ducky using exact same words, pointing his finger gun at it. Everyone should know some taboo words, just so they know that they are being offended by another person. Don't worry. Robert changes his mind about killing the rubber ducky. Instead, he confesses his true feelings for it. I love you. You are perfect. Robert also emulates a situation he watched on his television. Such an exercise is very useful. It's as close to production as you can get. When watching a film, try to remember one line, one quote, and use it in everyday situations. Simple example, the quote from the film The Terminator. I'll be back. I'll be back. There's another one I like to use, especially after a tough workout. I am a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton. Alright, back to Robert. How time flies. It's already winter. Robert orders another package. This time, it's a suitcase. He gets packed for a trip and leaves the house. The next time we see him, he's on the bus again. This time, he's a little nervous. He revises the verbs he learnt a few months back. He boards a plane to London then. You can tell by the fact that later he takes a ride in a London cab, one of those big, black, old-fashioned taxis. Robert gets off at the entrance to a house, where he is greeted by his son and his daughter-in-law. A small child, maybe 2 or 3 years old, looks at all the commotion and comes shyly towards Robert. The old man gets down so that their eyes meet and says, "Hi, I'm your grandpa." I have seen a lot of commercials, but none of them had such an impact on me like this one. I found it so touching that I had even shed a single tear. The writing is also very clever because, in case you haven't noticed, throughout the entire commercial, Robert has never said a single word in Polish, making his journey all the more motivating. Apart from some example exercises, there are few other points of interest for us. First, as I have said a few episodes back, you are never too old to learn anything really, English included. Second, think about the purpose of your English studies. Robert's purpose to learn was to be able to talk with his English-speaking grandson. Mine was more down to earth. Back in the day, all the best cartoons on my cable were in English, so I had to learn English so that I could understand them. Why do you study English? I leave you with that question. Thank you for listening. Happy holidays. In case you have forgotten, here's the revision of vocabulary for this episode with some example sentences. Additionally, you will find the translations in your notes. You will hear each sentence twice. Let's begin. Wreath, wreath, wieniec, girlanda. I don't know about you, but I think hanging wreaths around your car is an overkill. I don't know about you, but I think hanging wreaths around your car is an overkill. Bobble, bobble, bombka. This year, Glenda went for plastic bubbles instead of glass ones. This year, Glenda went for plastic bubbles instead of glass ones. Mistletoe, mistletoe, jemioła. Gary was running around the office with a piece of mistletoe in hopes of getting a kiss. Gary was running around the office with a piece of mistletoe in hopes of getting a kiss. Midnight Mass, midnight mass, pasterka. Children attended the midnight mass only to boast about the present they had gotten earlier. Children attended the midnight mass only to boast about the presents they had gotten earlier. Children attended the midnight mass only to boast about the presents they had gotten earlier.
And that's the conclusion of today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.